Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Radiant Resilience. This is an interesting bonus episode that I want to share with you. If you have not listened to the last episode of Radiant Resilience with Yara de la Torre, please go back and listen to that before you listen to this. I did a birth chart reading with her and she recorded it for me, and I decided that I was going to share it with all of you. So that is what this episode is about, is sharing my birth chart reading with you. And I want you to listen to this with the insight that Yara and I do not have a history together at all. Okay. She was introduced to me, brought to my attention by my dear friend, Kristen Sosman, and raved about Yara and how wonderful she is and how incredible of a story she has, which you can learn more about her story in the last episode right before this one. And so I reached out to her and set up an interview. We did the podcast interview. And in the interview, I decided it would be really fun to have her read my birth chart. So several weeks later, our schedules finally connected and she did a birth chart reading for me and we recorded it. And yeah, so the only conversation that she and I have ever had was that podcast interview. And she didn't know, going into this birth chart reading, she knew nothing about me. I mean, very little, obviously a little bit from our podcast that we did together, and maybe Kristen has shared some things with her, but she knew nothing about me. And my experience with this birth chart reading was mind-boggling. Like, I was mind blown at the things that she was saying and explaining to me. I mean, it was wild. For somebody who does not know me, does not know my history, doesn't know my life story, the things that were coming up and the things that she said, I took so many notes, so many notes. And it was just so interesting. So I want you to listen to this while also keeping in mind that she knew nothing about me. And I hope you enjoy it. It was very enlightening to me. And if anyone has any interest in doing a birth chart reading with Yara, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I will link her website for the birth chart readings in the show notes. Please click it and go check it out. It was well worth it and so insightful. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode of Radiant Resilience.
So I'm going to ask you some questions just to weigh out where you're at. All levels are welcome. And then once we get through that, I will share my screen and I'll start breaking things down, and it'll be like a very conversational kind of meeting. It's going to be about an hour long, and you'll get the recording, you'll get a picture of your birth chart. Also, I use astrology, of course, but oftentimes I'm called to pull either some tarot or some oracle cards, if that's something that you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
I may or may not use them. Okay, wonderful. So we'll do that, and that's about it. And my next and most important thing is, what is your intention for today's call?
I don't know. I've never really had my birth chart read to me. I've done a little bit of, I'm a Pisces and things like that. So my knowledge of astrology and stuff like that is very minimal. But I just thought it would be interesting. I've been working with Kristen, and I don't know, I just thought after our podcast episode that I was like, I'm gonna do that. And I've had some people tell me in the past to have my birth chart read and stuff too. And so I'm really interested to see what comes up.
Beautiful. I'm honored to be your very first birth chart reading. That's amazing. Thank you for being here. And yes, astrology is a really broad subject, and it can honestly be applied to everything in life, to our businesses, to ourselves. We can use it as a compass to navigate life and see what kind of cycles are coming up, how they're going to be impacting us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our first meeting usually is just a discovery of your own blueprint. So I like to think of the birth chart as like a soul contract. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah.
So I'm glad. So a soul contract is like a series of agreements that our soul signed up for to come into this lifetime and conquer. And our birth chart tells us not only what kind of experiences are we likely to encounter, but also what sort of how we're going to act around those experiences, right? The way in which we may be reactive to the situations that come up. It can also give us insight into the lessons that are waiting there to be discovered. It also is a beautiful tool just to discover more of like your purpose and what you're here for. Another really big placement that I like to focus on, and I'll tell you all the names and explain it and break it down, is a placement that tells us about our deepest trauma or biggest wound, because usually that's the theme that's going to be recurring in life. And usually one of the areas, like it tends to be like a shadowy aspect of our soul or ourselves that we either keep locked up or continue to see show up in like love, career, et cetera, et cetera. So it's important to discover these areas so that we can embrace them, so that we can stop feeling bad about them. And once we understand that they're a natural part of our makeup and our blueprint, when they do come up, we can have a little bit more compassion. All right. I would like to know, you said this is your very first birth chart reading, but I would like to know, as far as astrology goes as a whole, I have a little 1, 2, 3 marker. And I just want you to tell me where you're at, and halves are okay. So 1 would be like, I know I'm a Pisces and that's about it. That's the gist of it. 2 would be like, I know I'm a Pisces, maybe I know my moon sign, maybe I read my horoscope sometimes. Sometimes I like take in a little bit of astrology content. I'm interested, I want to learn more. What you do because you're here. 3 would be like, I'm pretty well versed. Like I know my big 3 and I am ready to expand even more. Where would you be at?
Maybe like a 1.5.
Beautiful. Okay, perfect. That tells me everything I need to know. All right, Miss Sonia. So we are going to share my screen right over here. And can you see this?
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to move it. I have a giant screen. So let me, I usually have all my windows open like at the same time and I can see them all. Okay, so beautiful. So I just want to make sure these details are right. That's March 5th, 1988. I put 1222 intuitively. You told me after 12, and that's just what I first received whenever it came through. And Denver, Colorado.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, beautiful. So let me take a little screenshot of this because I'll send it to you for you to have. Okay, so this is your birth chart. You may have seen something like this in the past, maybe in the internet. And first, I like to start off with like, again, astrology is a really broad subject, and everything that we're going to go through today regarding your own birth chart, there is a lot of information here, and some of it you're going to take in right away and grasp, and it's really going to make sense. Some of it may make more sense as time goes on in the next weeks or months, and some of it you're not meant to retain at all. Don't stress yourself over it, and also you'll have a recording that you can always go back to and study, take notes, etc. Also, if you're a note taker, feel free to take notes.
I'm ready.
All right. So this is a picture of your birth chart. And the way that I like to explain astrology is that thousands of years ago, whenever humans were exploring the skies and astrology, they noticed that there was a certain influence here on Earth in our individual and collective lives that would be impacted by the way that the planets or the celestial bodies, because we include the sun and the moon in that, would move throughout the sky, right? They were like, hey, every time that the sun or the moon is in the specific part of the sky, we see this kind of stuff going on. So we started to understand that there was an influence from the planets to us. And then during that study, they decided that they would split up the sky into 12 different parts, and that each one of these parts would have a certain set of characteristics and like traits. And they would name these 12 different parts the zodiac signs, which are like characters, right? Each character possesses like high vibrational like qualities to them and low vibrational qualities. Polarity is a part of life. One of the characters that you're probably the most familiar with is Pisces, because that's your sun sign, right? We see Pisces right up here. This signifies your sun. And then this is the sign right over here. And as you can see, there's all these other placements, which are like the sun's here, the moon is here, there is Mars. You may be familiar with that one. Venus is over here. You may have seen that one too. And then there's more that you don't need to like remember, but I will go through. And sometimes I will say things like, oh, your Mars in Capricorn mean blah, blah, blah. Don't worry so much about what the planet and the sign is. I will always explain what it means for you, right?
Okay.
So these archetypes are going to influence the planet, or the planet is going to be influenced by the archetype that it's on, right? And the planets also signifying things, right? So sun signifies the highest expression of who we are here on Earth, like how we shine, our personalities, and also it has to do with our egos. So when it comes to the way that you shine, you are very familiar with Pisces characteristics, right? Pisces are usually people who are very tender, very caring, right? Spiritual type of beings. On the low vibrational side, Pisces can be escapists. They can definitely be like the type of people that are like, I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. And this is okay, right? Or they are also known to be oftentimes self-victimizing. And this is something that you could experience, or you may have experienced and have moved past. Everything that I say is actually something that could be a core part of you, or something that you have been improving on your entire life, because astrology does move, and there is something called progressive astrology. But right now we just look into the makeup. So we don't want to get hung up on the, oh yeah, I am a victim and I'm a victim for life. No, you're able to, but those are some of the low vibe, like traits or characteristics of this character, which is Pisces. And this is a prominent energy in you, not just because it's your sun, but there's a couple other things that I'm going to go into. Your life is really influenced and very, very focused around like leaning more into your spirituality. And this is not always something that may be familiar to you. It is something that you are working on, but your life does call for you to trust more, for you to lean more into your feminine energy, for you to not always have to have a super solid plan. And from there, you're going to expand more, right? So we'll get into that later, but regress, going back to the planets being in different areas of the sky. Whenever we talk about your sun sign, that basically means that at the time of your birth on March 5th, 1988, around 12 p.m. in Denver, Colorado, if you would stepped outside and you would have looked up at the sky, the sun, the big ball of fire, was in the place of the sky that we call Pisces. So that makes you a Pisces sun. And then we look at where all the other planets were positioned at that exact time of your birth that you decided to come into this world, because that becomes your own unique blueprint. And have you ever heard of the term the big three in astrology? No? Okay. So the big three is basically like a cliff notes to who people are. Like in astrology spaces, oftentimes you'll find people asking like, what are your big three? Or if you follow like an astrology page that does like updates, like a lot of like individual updates, this is what to expect for Capricorn. This is what to expect for Aries. Like that, you would want to look not just into Pisces, but you also want to look into your moon sign and your rising sign.
Okay.
Why? Because those two other placements make up this like cliff notes of who whatever individual particular is, right? That's why there is such a difference between you as a Pisces and maybe your friend that's a Pisces, and maybe a family member that's a Pisces. You guys are different because although the sun was in that sign whenever y'all were born, your moon, which represents our emotional state of being and our feelings and how we think about or how we feel about things, which is obviously a huge part of the human experience. Your specific moon is in Libra. So that would be the second component of your big three. So Pisces sun, Libra moon. So a Pisces sun who's intuitive, kind, somebody who is here to explore more of their spirituality. Maybe even like I was saying, like Pisces can be almost a little disconnected from the world, or it can be easy to disconnect from the world and just go into your own fantasy world, right? But with an emotional inner clock of Libra, there is this big focus also on ensuring that the way that Libra, okay, so Libras want fairness, they want harmony, they want balance, right? Emotionally, it is very important for you to feel balance. And that can present itself in, again, high vibe versions and low vibe versions. High vibe versions, this is somebody who can be very diplomatic, somebody who can be a good leader because they really do put everybody's needs into perspective when it comes to things. Low vibe side of a Libra moon, codependency and people pleasing, like being like, I want everybody to be happy. So I'm going to sacrifice myself in order to ensure that everything and everyone is good. And this is like groups in your life, for work, for yourself, but particularly, particularly, Tawny, because it sits in your fourth house, and the houses are areas of your own specific life. And this is more advanced astrology, so you don't need to understand it. But where a specific planet sits in your own chart, it is going to have an even bigger impact. And the fourth house is the house of home and family, ancestry, the house, like the home that you grew up with, the family that you grew up with, the family that you created, people who feel like family. It also has to do with ancestral stuff and generational things. So usually when I see strong placements in the fourth house, I know that I'm in the presence of a generational breaker, like a curse breaker. So there is a certain emotional state or connection that you have to your home and your roots. And there is some balance that you're bringing there. And that is part of like your life's journey. Next in your big three is your rising sign, which your rising is also ascendant. It's just like interchangeable words. And your ascendant is the sign that rules over your first house right over here, because our first house has to do with our individualism, like who we are. And the rising sign or ascendant sign, what it represents in astrology is, number one, how we come off when we're not even trying. Like the way that I like to describe it, if you were sitting at a coffee shop and somebody walked in that didn't know you, they would look over at you and they would say, she gives off this vibe. And your rising sign is Cancer. Okay. So Cancer is another water sign. So you have a Pisces, which is a water sign, a moon, which is Libra, and that's air. And then your rising sign is Cancer, which is water. So two elements of water there. You have quite a big influence of water in your chart, which makes for somebody who's highly intuitive, highly emotional, very deep feelings, very intense feelings. Yeah.
Also, I definitely feel like I have an affinity for water. I love being at the beach, in the water, in a lake, near a river. I love paddleboarding. I feel so at peace when I am in or near the water. So,
and like for clarity, for cleansing, for focus, like any time that you feel cloudy, which is very common for Pisces to not be like, I don't know where the fuck I'm going. It feels like there's a little cloud in front of you, right? And that feeling comes up when you're looking for more expansion, when you're looking for more wisdom, go to the water. Even if it's something as small as like taking a bath or a shower.
I take baths like every day almost.
Even if it's, imagine you being like in a big setting where you like need to focus and like you're like in a building, like literally go wash your hands and like present with that like energy. And yeah,
Okay.
water's super important for you.
Okay.
With that being said, I'm going to go into Cancer, but before I do that, everybody has a chart ruler. It's a ruling planet that rules over your whole chart, and it is more prominent for you than anybody else. And it is the planet that rules over your rising sign. Cancer is ruled by the moon, rules over Cancer. Yeah. So for somebody, like for me, I'm a Sagittarius rising, so Jupiter is my planet. So Jupiter transits, which are a year long, it moves every year, are very important and they really impact me, right?
Mm.
For you, the moon moves every 2 days. So you're like making this
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. So a really beautiful practice for you would be to, I don't know if you do journaling.
Hi, friend, and welcome to this episode of Radiant Resilience. We are always looking for new guests on the podcast. I want to highlight you if you have a story of resilience that inspires others. Everyone has a story, and I believe that sharing yours can help others feel less alone. Are you ready to share your journey and inspire others? I want to hear from you. Every story has the power to impact lives and foster a supportive community. If you have a tale of overcoming adversity, personal growth, or a unique perspective on life's challenges, I would love to have you as a guest on the podcast. To become a guest, please email us directly at radientresiliencepodcast@gmail.com or click the link in the show notes to become a guest. Join us in spreading hope, strength, and inspiration one story at a time. Be brave and share your story so others feel less alone. I hope to see you soon. But I've been off and on with that. I have moments where I'm really consistent with it and everything's just flowing. And then lately I've been not as good at that.
That's totally fine. So if you ever wanted to jump back in and explore a little bit more, there is an app. I didn't even know what it's called because I took off all the names of my apps, but it's like a moon app. And it's like this. And it tells you right down here what sign the moon is on, which is Aries right now. I can send this to you.
Yeah, that would be good.
And a really cool practice for you particularly is to really quickly just be like, October 16th, moon in Aries, and then do like a drop of like how you're feeling, like what you're emotionally going through. And like keeping track of that, even if it's not every day, you may find themes in like when you feel more like doing stuff, when you feel more tired, when you feel, because you are going to be very affected by the moon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if you feel like full moons very strongly.
Yeah.
We're about to have one tomorrow and it's in Aries and it's actually like pretty intense energy. So there could be a lot of like physical energy, like it's been hard to sleep, like uneasiness. It's also really, there's a lot going on in the Astros right now, but like anger and like hastiness is also like prominent. So I'm actually recommending people to lay low. Like conflict and like arguments are definitely like a theme right now. So just from now until the 18th, I believe, maybe 19th. But anyway, I regress. So that is your chart ruler. And then Cancer, your rising sign, this is how you come up. So let's go back to the coffee shop analogy, right? So when somebody walks in, they see you sitting at the coffee shop, Cancer qualities that may come off is actually like very welcoming energy. Cancer is the mother of the zodiac. Capricorn, its opposite is the father, which you have a lot of Capricorn energy. We'll get into that. But you come off as this like maternal, kind, giving, soft individual, maybe even like wise. Maybe people see you as a mother figure or like somebody who can nurture them in that way. Yeah. So that's beautiful. You could also come off as the not so great Cancer qualities, which could be like overbearing, overly emotional. Probably not on first instance, But who knows? Well, it's not our job to come off any kind of way to anybody, but it is something that if you've in the call been like, if in the past you've been called like dramatic or overly emotional or
I'm definitely overly emotional.
right, or like you make something out of nothing type of thing, like it's okay, that might be true to you, but as a matter of fact, one of the ways in which we can shine brighter in life and show up more and do more, and this also applies to social media. I don't know if you're like trying to grow, I think we all are, right? Trying to grow our businesses and our platform. Whenever I do business readings, which I will be diving into that, but one of the components of like how we should brand ourselves is by leaning more into our rising sign. So if people call you like overly emotional, those are just not your people, because you are actually going to shine brighter and be seen more and be received better by the people that are meant to receive you. The more you lean into the Cancer qualities intentionally. In your branding, having themes of water, like pearls, just beaches, like that sort of thing could very much attract the right people. Also, having a tone in which you are nurturing your audience like a mother would, like softly guiding and like giving a tender approach in which like it's like you can let your guard down, like I am here to hold space for you. Yeah. Okay. Where's your Venus and Aquarius? Okay, and then with that being said, also you can, because Venus is another piece of it. Venus is a piece of it, and then the 10th house is a piece of it. Oh wait, that's not your Venus. Oh, your Venus is in the 10th house. Perfect. Okay, it can also, oh wow, you have a lot of 29 degrees. I'll get into that. Mothering, loving, but also like passionate and unafraid. Fiery as well. I know that I just said water, but Aries is like not afraid to jump and not afraid to say what they mean, and they take action. Yeah. Okay. Let's do a quick check-in. That's a lot. It's been like 30 minutes, not even. So how are we feeling?
Good. It's all very interesting.
Okay, wonderful. Is there anything that sticks out to you? Anything that's landing?
Quite a lot of it is actually. It's actually really interesting to me how many times you've talked about the mothering and the maternal side and nurturing and things like that, because I have actually not been able to have children, and I've tried very hard over the last 10 years and been unable to. So it's interesting that keeps coming up in different ways.
Yeah.
Making me look at it in different ways. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's so hard. That's so hard. And I don't know if it's our generation. Like I feel like I have sat with many women who have encountered the same sort of experience. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know. It's just so interesting how that is happening within our generation, I feel, and what it's teaching us, and like how we see womanhood and motherhood and nurturing and like our own bodies and our womb, and the fifth house, which represents our joy, our creativity, our fun, our inner child, but also like children of our own or children in our lives. You do have Pluto, Pluto is the planet of transformation, rebirth, destruction in order to lead to creation, right? And anybody's Pluto in their chart is going to be a pretty like shadowy aspect. There is going to be a lot of deaths and rebirths that happen through here. And Pluto is a generational planet. So in astrology, like there's the whole like Gen X and what year is it, and Gen Z, or like whatever. We literally see it as where your Pluto is. Like Pluto and Scorpio is millennials, right? So we are part, and generation, the reason it's generational is because Pluto has a really weird orbit. Like all of our planets are like circulating like this, like right here in this spot, and then Pluto's here. And that's why they kick it out of the being a real planet all the time. But anyway, it takes anywhere between 15, sometimes up to 28 years for Pluto to transit one sign. So you can see how it's generational, more like 15 to 20 years. So it is a generational planet. And us millennials were born, we're big, we're the generation that was born in Scorpion. Pluto is destruction and rebirth. And whatever sign those babies were born in, it's like collectively we came here to do something regarding that theme. The generation before us, the Gen Xers, they were Pluto and Libra, and that was the generation that Libra has to do with harmony, balance, relationships, justice, democracy, and marriage. And that was the generation that was like deconstructed the nuclear family. They're like, we'll get divorced. It's fine.
Yeah.
We don't have to sit in this like abusive marriage. Like all of a sudden, it also was the generation that brought or tried to bring a lot of balance to women and men. Women can do what men can do, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that like play. And then us, Scorpio, Pluto, Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. Scorpio is also the archetype of death, rebirth, shadow, transformation. And there is this theme of exploring our own darkness, allowing parts of us to die in order to be born again. So millennials were like, hold up. This fucking generational trauma that has been going for like eons, like we're gonna stop this shit. Like it is not, it's also a very spiritual sign. So wherever that is in our chart, there is going to be a lot of fucking transformation that's going to feel really hard. And for you particularly, yours is making some aspects which are geometrical interactions between characters, right?
Okay.
So your Pluto is trining, which is a positive aspect, I would say, like a complementary, like these planets are supporting. So by having this destruction and death and rebirth and discomfort around places like where you have fun, how you create, how you experience pleasure, your inner child, maybe even your childhood. This theme where it's been challenging to conceive, right? There's so many deaths and rebirths that come from that. I don't know if you've experienced actual loss. I know a lot of women have. That changes you forever. Like you never are the person that you were before. That is, you brought life into the world to a certain degree. And I think that it's also important to remember. And I've done a lot of study around past lives and just lives in general, like soul work. And souls who came in even just into the womb, like they too had a chance to a human life. And they too had a moment and a purpose. So of course that would transform you. Now, the two aspects that are supportive, basically, this is touching on your ascendant, which is that nurturing, like coming off energy, right? Your identity. It is also going to accelerate your intuition. It is also going to soften you. Another positive aspect that is making is to your Pisces 9th house. So since we are here, I'm going to talk about the influences that you have in Pisces. So your sun is in Pisces, your midheaven, which is MC right here, is also in Pisces, and your midheaven represents the way in which you shine the brightest, the way that people see you in the public eye. And it also has to do with your legacy, like what you are leaving behind in this lifetime. And then coincidentally, and this doesn't always happen, your purpose, which is your North Node, which is what you came into this lifetime to do. So North Node and South Node work together. Your South Node is in Virgo, which is your past life, also karmic stuff lives here. Virgo energy is very comfortable, which you are not like in your most recent past life, you were probably somewhat of a practical being, somebody who was a helper, analytical, logical, makes plans, puts plans into action, very physical oriented. That shit comes so fucking natural to you. You're like, oh, this makes sense. Like, I do this and this is the result in the physical. In this lifetime, you signed up to learn more about the spiritual. And not only that, but your soul's, I'm going to make her shine as a spiritual being. I am going to make her be seen the most in the public eye and like the legacy as a spiritual being, but she doesn't know how to be a spiritual being.
Yeah.
So it is uncomfortable. And what I say about the North Node is that you are going to be presented over and over in life with situations and experiences that are going to challenge you to step up to that role. Right? So it could get easier in time, but the lessons remain similar. And for you, the lessons may be a lot around trusting your intuition, trusting the universe, not always having to have a plan, not always relying in the physical. And this could have been a theme that you've seen like from your early years, and then it'll show up similarly in your teenage years, and then it'll show up similarly in your 20s, and like you like level up. Every time it's similar, but it's different, and then there's growth from it. You embody more of that energy. Also, it is in your 9th house, Tawny. The 9th house is ruled in traditional astrology by Sagittarius, by Jupiter. So this is a house that represents higher learning, wisdom, teaching, also studying, expansion, good luck, and long distance travel. So with that being said, these Piscean attributes that you have could shine brighter or expand more for other people. Like you could be an expander for others. You could help others dream bigger by embodying more of your Piscean qualities. It could also mean that you could find a lot of these experiences in long distance travel, in learning, in studying. Like you are called to a life of being a teacher and a student, possibly more than likely, like almost 100% being like a mentor or even like a guru of some type. And I don't use that word like often.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to what even brought me to this is that through these difficult Pluto transformations of shadowy aspects of having to face our biggest fears, of see the ugly parts of our soul and our emotions and our losses, that is going hand in hand with your purpose. It is going hand in hand with how you are seen in the public eye. It is going hand in hand and supporting your legacy. Yes.
So that's funny too, because I was telling Kristen that I was going to do this with you, and she was like, I really want to know what Yara has to say about you and loss. So now you've just brought that losses hand in hand with my purpose. So can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So our 5th house is where we are called to have fun, to have expression, to experience pleasure and joy. It's also like casual sex and children and child stuff, right? So with Pluto being there, it means that you are guaranteed Pluto in Scorpio, which makes it that much more of an aggressive, transformative energy that just comes with being a millennial. all of those areas, there is almost a guarantee that you will experience loss in those areas, right? This could also look like people who have been like victims of sexual abuse sometimes, or who have had trouble around expressing themselves sexually or in the bedroom, right? This could also look like having experienced loss at an early age, right? That transformed you. And each one of those experiences is bringing you more in tune with these Piscean qualities that, not even just Piscean, this watery, hold on, watery parts of your being that could feel uncomfortable to you, or like that you are exploring. Oh my God, stop doing that. That you are exploring. And then another part of it here, Tawny, that I hadn't quite gotten to is that you have one other positive aspect, which is a sextile. So it's even more. A trine is really good. A sextile is like explosive good, right? It's the best. So through this death and rebirth, through this loss, through these transformations, you are supercharging your influence in your relationships. The seventh house has to do with, so if the first house is us, the seventh house right across it is others, right? So this is your relationships, like actual love relationships, but also people that you are in relation with. It could also point towards like work relationships that you're in with clients, right? So there is this force of transformation that allows you to show up. This is a superpower placement right here. Mars in Capricorn is exalted. Mars is the planet of action, determination, motivation, also anger and war, and like it signifies blood and things like that, very masculine energy. And in Capricorn, Capricorn is the father of the zodiac. It is the goat, like literally, like the greatest of all. And super productive, super full throttle. So when we have Mars and Capricorn, it's this like explosive energy of movement, of motivation, of determination. So all of that combined means that through this loss, through this storyline that you have experienced in your life, it is making you softer. It is helping you lean more into your feminine energy. And through that, you are inspiring those around you, those that you are in relation with, to really fucking go for what they want. Right? And it also gives you a superpower when it comes to you in relation to others. It'll give you some almost like seniority or like credibility in like what your superpower is. There's also Neptune here, which has to do with dreaming and expansion. And it is also in Capricorn, and Capricorn's all about like building. So with your Pisces in the ninth house, which means, hey, be that spiritual guru. I don't know why that comes in, but be this spiritual, like motherly being, and long, white, flowy dress. I'm like, lean into that. Share your pain, share your loss, share.
Hence the podcast that I
Ah,
have.
so good. And it is literally going to supercharge people's dreams and their belief that they too can build something long lasting. Full body chills. It does square your eighth house. Fuck. My God. Oh my God. Okay. This is tough. It squares your 8th house. Pluto squares your 8th house, which is square is a friction aspect. So these energies are not really cooperating, more like they're also not cooperating, they're interacting, but in the way that they interact, they bring about challenges. This death and rebirth and this loss, the 8th house has to do with shared contracts. It has to do with intimacy. It is ruled by Scorpio, usually. Your Scorpio Pluto is making an aspect to your shadows and your depths and the shit that we keep in the closet. Also taboo stuff. And it also has to do with shared agreements and finances. So marriage lives there. And this almost sounds obvious, but these losses, the way that you have had maybe shadowy aspects surrounding creativity, surrounding joy, surrounding pleasure, experiencing loss, connecting with your inner child, the actual physical, grief that comes from it, it's going to cause friction or challenge in those like most intertwined shared relationships. Could be marriage. It could also be your relationship with your subconscious, right? There's this fear, shadow stuff. And then Eros is there, which this is really advanced astrology, but Eros signifies like erotic, like that's where the word erotic comes from. So there is some things to dig in there around, again, pleasure and what turns you on and what feels good. And in Aquarius, your Eros being in Aquarius, that means try things outside the box. Yeah, like literally freaky shit. like Aquarius is literally like the most out there fucking sign. So there could be some healing that happens there through exploring outside of the box. So I'll just leave you with that tad bit, because this is going to trine, positive aspect, your moon. Like it is going to maybe bring more balance to your emotional state of being and to how home feels. And it could challenge, right over here, you have this inconjunct. It could challenge your deepest wound and your identity of self. Your deepest wound, this is what I'm going to finish up with, because it is a prominent aspect and one of the most influential things that I saw in your chart. Your Chiron, Chiron is the earliest discovery that we made in the 1970s, and it's a comet asteroid, and it represents our deepest wound, fear, or trauma. And wherever the sign it's on, we are going to experience challenges around this. And the funny thing about Chiron is that, number one, it's a wounded healer. So through that wound, we learn to heal it, and we discover more magic, and we help others with similar wounds. But also, I always like to say Chiron's a fucking liar, because the usual, like typically our biggest fear and our deepest wound is like the fear of blank. And it usually is always the freaking opposite. Like people are like, no, that's not true at all about you. But you, for some reason, developed this wound either generationally or something happened in your life, in your childhood. Usually that's where trauma develops, that made you feel this way. And Chiron in Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and it signifies communication. It signifies curiosity. It signifies like asking questions, like bigger thinking. And Chiron in Gemini is like the fear of being misunderstood, or the fear of sounding stupid, or nobody fucking cares, or nobody's listening, or nobody will ever really fully understand me, or I make no sense. And a lot of times this one was developed, usually like 80s kids for sure. Shut up and look pretty. You don't like kids are to be seen, not heard, like thing, which is typical for that generation. And yours is in the 12th house. And the 12th house, I always say 4th, 8th, and 12th house transits or placements are usually the hardest. And when I see Chiron in one of those houses, I have it in the 8th. It's pretty intense. Again, it's another clear pointer that you are here to break down like generational stuff. And it means that it's almost like a deeper struggle. The 12th house is the house that's ruled by Pisces. So it's the spiritual, like not in your chart, but in general astrology. So it's the general, or it's the spiritual self. It is like the nothingness. It is like we are one with the universe, but it also has to do with our mental health and our limiting beliefs and our subconscious beliefs. So when I see a Chiron or a difficult placement in the 12th house, this can look like mental turmoil, like especially with Gemini being there, because Gemini is like a thinking voice in your head sort of thing, like the mean girl voice that's like bullying you and telling you like nobody cares what you have to say or you sound or like whatever it may be. And we heal this over time. But it's important to note, and most of all, the medicine is in the fact that it is not true at all. Like the reality of it is we want to hear what you have to say. Like the podcast is like such a freaking like manifestation of the healing part of the wounded healer, right? Like you're like, fuck that. Like I'm going to use my voice to its full potential and I'm going to be heard. And because it is in your 12th house, there is a lot of wisdom that comes through from sharing pain and sharing difficult experiences. And it is very inspiring and healing for others. How does that land?
Spot on.
Beautiful. Okay. Tawny, I honestly have something huge to tell you, and like we don't have much time, but I would recommend that you get a reading in January again.
Okay.
Because you have something called a nodal return. And a nodal return is when the nodes of the moon, which is what dictates our eclipses, which is what eclipses are a huge part of my work. If you're not familiar with it, go back a couple weeks because we just had some from 17 through the 2nd of October. So I posted about it just so you can like get the gist of what eclipses are. They're huge transformation portals and they happen twice a year. And whatever signs they fall on, that is going to be the area that's being transformed. For you, you've been transforming since March of 2023. You've been transforming how you are seen in the public eye, like how you show up, using your voice more, being more authentic. You've been letting go of people-pleasing tendencies. And this also has to do with family. It was activating your 4th house. So this could have been like stepping back a little bit from the stress and like the chains that kept you tied to feeling like you had to give up parts of yourself for your family or for your home and stepping more into your own leadership. So that theme is still ongoing now, and it's hit hard probably around October of 2023, definitely March and April of 2024, just recently between September 17th and October 2nd. And yeah, that's been the theme. Now, the nodes are moving in January. It's this one right here. And this is your. So I'm going to cast the chart. Bam. Right when it enters Pisces, it is going to be activating your node. This is your next year and a half of supercharged soul ascension straight into your purpose.
Okay. That's so scary.
So get ready. Like I have chills.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh my God. So I recommend that. I don't usually tell people like, hey, come back and see me like exactly at a certain point, but I noticed that kind of halfway through your chart reading, not even like maybe 10 minutes ago. And I was like, oh shit, but you needed to understand all of this first. So I don't feel like I missed anything because you came here. I always ask Spirit, like, what is this meeting about? There's no coincidences. We're here for a reason. And Spirit said that you came to this reading to remember that you are the magician, that you are the co-creator of your own life. You came here to have a remembrance of your power and your ability to create the life that you came here to live. And then I asked for what is the energy that you need to embody right now. Two cards came out. And this is the 7 of Coins reverse. And the 7 of Coins upright means like waiting and like seeing your fruitions come, like you planted the seeds. That's over. And then you've got the Page of Pentacles that's like, it's here. It's here now. Like we're done waiting. This is it. And it is leading you to a time in which you, like, it's here now, but you don't necessarily need to take any action. So the King of Wands is go fast, go full throttle. Like it is here now, but you're not being asked like to really do anything different. Like just keep going. Like it is here, like you're living it. And I think January is really going to kickstart it. So just get prepared. Remember who you are, like remember your power. You've planted all the seeds and like now they're blossoming. Like now you're living in like what you prayed for. And the underlying message or the shadow card of like, why is this all happening that we may not be able to fully grasp right now, but like you're in this cycle right now. And the reason behind it all is the Star, which is card number 17 in the Major Arcana. Just like the Magician is also a Major Arcana. So those are more strong messages. So strongest message here is you are the creator. The strongest shadow message is like, why is this all happening? The Star is, this is healing on a mental, spiritual, and physical level. Like you're doing some major healing through this cycle. So, yeah. How do you feel?
Feel really good, but a little overwhelmed. But it's also interesting because you don't know much about me in general. And so to hear you like read all those things and talk about all those things, I just was like, oh, wow. So that was really cool.
Yay. Awesome. Do you have any questions for me right now?
Not at the moment, no. Yeah, but I'll definitely. Do you have a specific time in January that I should try to schedule that with you, or?
I'll tell you. While I look, what would you say your biggest takeaway is, or like the one that pops up the most right now?
Many. I don't know. I don't know. It's just it all made so much sense. Like it just makes so much sense for who I am and things I'm going through and why. And I don't know. It was all just so spot on. I just can't even.
Beautiful.
I can't even pick one.
I love it. Okay.
The whole thing was a big takeaway. Is that a cop out?
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Okay. The notes officially moved on January 12th. So honestly, anytime in the month of January, like whatever feels good. It's a crazy month, but definitely like before your birthday, like I wouldn't. So I would just make a mental note or like whenever you're ready, like book a reading. So you can just be on the schedule for January. Next year, I'm going to probably be opening up my availability a lot more. But yeah, other than that, Tawny, I am always here for support. My inbox is always open. So if as time goes on, something comes up and you want to talk about it or you want to ask me questions, always message me, like voice notes, whatever, an open door. And then I also started doing tips for tarot to become more accessible for everyone, to do quick little check-ins. So it's not like a video call. It's right on my profile. You can click the link and I have 3 different tiers, $5, $11, or $22 for a message. So if along the way, at some point you're like, I just need to see what's going on or how this feels, like you can always go to my profile and look into that. I also have my Moon Portal community, which is $11.11 a month. We meet twice a month to go over the current moon cycles, which is super important for you.
Yeah.
And then I think that's it. That's my whole spiel.
Oh, thank you so much. That was amazing. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Brought up a lot of feelings too.
Yay, thank you. I'll be sending this over the next 24 hours or so. And I always appreciate referrals. If you can think of anybody in your life who would appreciate this, please send them my way.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Yara. We'll talk again soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed our conversation and found value in the stories shared, please consider following us on your preferred podcast platform. Your ratings and reviews make a huge difference. They help us reach more listeners and continue bringing you engaging, insightful content. We appreciate your support and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Until next time, keep listening, growing, and sharing.